Hello, brothers and sisters from Singles for Christ. This is Ilsa Reyes, inspirational author, speaker, healing facilitator, and Teleradyo host. How are you all there in New Zealand? I pray for your safety, wellness, wholeness, and healing. It is my wish that my insights on hope in the time of COVID will really help us experience God's love, mercy, and compassion amid these difficult times. Remember, God loves you, Mama Mary loves you. Thank you very much, Sister Ellie and Brother Brendan, for the invitation to be with you across the miles.
Let's talk about hope in the time of COVID. I think we're all aware that there are many stressors these days, and to simply summarize these stressors, we could categorize them in the following areas. We have, of course, physiological, because we are experiencing an emergency crisis when it comes to health. And it's very unfortunate that as of this time, we still do not have a confirmed cure or vaccine for COVID. And so this gives us a certain sense of fear and uncertainty regarding how long this pandemic, this global emergency situation is going to last. The World Health Organization tells us that it's here to stay. Wow, that's awful to hear. No? But the question is, how are we not only going to survive, but even going to thrive amidst this health situation around the world? And also, we have a financial crisis. I'm not so sure how it is in New Zealand because I think you're back to level 2 now, as we were discussing earlier, and perhaps some businesses are being resurrected. But here in the Philippines, there are a lot of people who are complaining that they've lost their jobs. I know of a particular person who works in the travel industry, and when the lockdown started about 2 months ago, she still was receiving a salary from her boss in Singapore. But just last month, she was told that she could no longer be given a salary. And so she cannot rely on her career in the tourism industry. Airlines are also experiencing a lot of losses, and even small and medium enterprises are suffering a lot. There are possibilities of some companies laying off people. And so it is not uncommon to see comments on Facebook from individuals saying, I no longer have a source of income. I don't know where to get money to pay for my bills. And if you're not particularly experiencing it there, you might have relatives here in the Philippines who are complaining about this particular effect of COVID. Then, of course, there's a psychological. The United Nations came up with this statement that the COVID pandemic is sparkling a major mental health crisis around the world. And if before COVID, there was already an increase in depression and rates in suicide and mental health issues around the world, due to COVID and its ill effects on people, the tendency towards mental stress and distress is even greater these days. Then the burdens on relationships. There was even a joke, even though the joke is probably based on bits of reality, that after COVID, some couples would probably go separate ways because they're so sick and tired of seeing each other every day during lockdown period. So COVID puts a strain on our relationships. It doesn't only mean for those who are married, but even those who are living with other people inside their homes or inside their residences. There's also the spiritual. It's a good thing there that you can at least go to the church and there's discipline. You have 10 people at a time, although of course we would want more people inside the churches. Right now here in Metro Manila, for example, we're still not allowed to have mass gatherings, and that would include physical accessibility to the sacraments. And we cannot go to the churches. Just today, my family and I, we had the experience of participating in an online mass. So we could not accept our Lord Jesus sacramentally in terms of his body and blood. And some people are asking, where is the Lord in all these? Is he alive? Is he listening to us? Why would he allow the COVID pandemic to happen to us if he really cares about us? I mean, if you watched, for example, that time when Pope Francis was walking in the rain in the evening on St. Peter's Square to deliver his Urbi et Orbi, a special blessing in the time of the pandemic. You know, that was so moving, but at the same time, I'm sure there were a lot of questions in the hearts of people from all over the world, especially if you've been to St. Peter's Basilica and St. Peter's Square. It's normally filled with people. It's normally bustling with a lot of tourists. And it was so strange seeing Pope Francis and just a few people there in the Vatican at that time. So let's admit it, there was also, and there has also been a spiritual crisis due to the ill effects of COVID. And then, well, Brother Brendan mentioned this earlier, political. There are a lot of politicians, for example, that might be grandstanding, and you see some quarrels online between political figures, and we know that a lot of countries are even blaming China for what is happening, and there's this squabble online between the United States and China, for instance. So these are stressors. Whether we like it or not, let's admit that they do cause us to worry, to have anxiety, and to have fear. But amidst these negative feelings, we are invited to apply hope. HOPE. And hope is, as I would share today, an acronym with the letter H standing for healing. I think this is a grace period for us to really look within ourselves regarding how authentic our relationship with God is. Those who introduce themselves, you're from Singles for Christ or Youth for Christ, and I'm so glad that you are part of this wonderful spiritual support group and community. And I'm sure that you love the Lord and you are experiencing the love of God. That's why you are with SFC or with YFC. But sometimes we also get to neglect amidst our business, and even in our business in church work and in ministry, our personal relationship with God in terms of the areas of our lives that still need his healing love. You know, I'm really an advocate of healing, inner healing and holistic healing. And as I go around giving talks about these particular topics, I realize that many of us might have traces of unforgiveness, of hurts from childhood. Some people even have wounds from way back during the time they were in their mother's womb. For example, I encountered a particular lady who was already a member of a very big charismatic community here in the Philippines. And I remember when she approached me, she said that she would email me her story. And it was a story that she could not automatically share with just anybody, even from or even with members of her community, because she was just so ashamed, devastated about what had happened to her in the past. She was actually a victim of abuse by her own father. But what was worse was that when her mother was pregnant with her, her mother was a teenage mom who was not ready to give birth to her, who was not ready to raise her properly. And at that time, her mother, a teenage mom, was an NPA rebel. You do remember what NPA means, the New People's Army. So she was an NPA rebel, and she was running away from the authorities. And I could just imagine, having read books and materials about healing from the womb, that at the time this lady was conceived in her mother's womb, she was already experiencing very deep anxiety. And I think there was even an attempt by the mother to abort her. And so as early as the time she was there in her mother's tummy, she was already filled with anxiety, and she was fighting for her very own life, experiencing rejection from the person who was supposed to defend her in the first place. So sometimes there are very deep-seated issues that we are not able to go into. And this time of COVID, because we've had to do some social distancing, we've had to do silencing, we've had to find a sacred space within our homes, as we've been asked to keep away from public gatherings. It is also a grace period to look into our relationship with God. How deep is this relationship of ours with God? And how profound is our experience of His mercy, His forgiveness, and His healing in our lives personally? Who is God to me? And who am I to Him? Of course, we also speak about healing our relationship with ourselves. Sometimes we say we love so many people, but we forget to love ourselves. And there's a reminder that we cannot give what we do not have. So in order for us to properly love our neighbors, we need to love ourselves. Healthy self-love is not selfish. This time of COVID also invites us to better relationships with other people. Sometimes the persons we take for granted are the ones we are living with, staying with, the people who are closest to us. I can see that Brother Brendan and Sister Ellie really are a powerful team, and they do love each other. I was blessed to witness their wedding here in Manila. But I would suppose that Brother Brendan and Sis Ellie know that, as with other relationships, not just marital relationships, relationships need to be taken care of. We cannot always guess what is happening to others. We need to engage in deep level communication. We need to be able to say thank you for each other, not only once in a while, but on a regular basis. Each person is a special treasure and gift from God, and we cannot box in people. Sometimes we think we already know a particular individual, but there's always something to discover about others. And so the time of COVID is a wonderful grace period to deepen our knowledge about each other. And not only that, to look into areas where we can be healed in our relationship with each other. It's also good that as we ask for the healing graces of God to come into our hearts and into our lives, that we share our feelings about what is happening. It's good to journal it out. It's good to talk about it with somebody we trust. It's good to tell the Lord exactly where we are coming from and what we are experiencing. It may be something negative. You might be feeling depressed. You might be feeling bored. You might even be experiencing anger that's surfacing. It might be anger that's been buried for so long, and it's only now, when you're seeing all this tension about COVID, that this anger is coming out. That might be unprocessed negative feelings from the past. A lot of people who fall into depression do so because there were feelings from way before that they were not able to confront and ask God healing for. So it's good to be able to admit where we are coming from. If you remember that movie Inside Out, I don't know if you've watched it, but it's an animation movie, and it was talking about our different feelings. And that feelings could be positive, they could be negative. Sometimes we think in order for us to be happy, we should just focus on happy moments. But what this movie was reminding us of was that in order to be truly free and whole, we need to also face even the negative feelings in our lives. Our tendency very often is to run away from the negative feelings, even through good activities, even through church ministry or work. There might be a temptation to say, I'll just keep myself busy with church work, but not really spend time asking the Lord to go into details of our lives to heal us of experiences that may still be blocking His fullness of life in us. So being aware of where we are, being aware of unprocessed baggage from the past. This time of COVID would remind us of certain priorities and even things we may have forgotten about, because these are times of urgency. The time of COVID is a time to look at life and death situations. And life isn't just about physical life, it is also about the psycho-spiritual aspects of our being. It might be good to have a healing journal if you realize that, oh, I still need God's healing touch in this particular event of my life from childhood or from the time I entered teenage life or when I started becoming a young professional. You might want to actually keep a healing journal so that you would know which areas specifically are inviting you to focus on forgiving people in your life. They might have been simple incidents in your life, but then you might not be realizing that you still need to forgive your best friend, for example, your ex-boyfriend, your ex-girlfriend, or your teacher in high school. And the healing journal would help you take note of that. It would help you look at your process of healing and wholeness. In the acronym HOPE, the letter O pertains to opportunities. I think it depends on us if we will be reactive or proactive in this time of COVID. And as that illustration says, have a growth mindset. Hopefully we're not stuck in negativity, but we are able to see the good in everything that is happening, even if we might feel discouragement to a certain degree. For example, this is a time to look at our personal dreams, goals, and priorities. I have 3 senior citizens here in the house. My mom is a senior citizen. She's 85 years old.
Wow.
And I make sure that she does not go out, because even if my mom is strong in many aspects, she's healthy physiologically, but COVID is, it's some kind of a beast, and it's very dangerous for the elderly to be exposed to it. And so I make sure that she stays here at home. And I realized that with this COVID situation, you get to see who are the people who are really important to you. Who are the people who are important to me? And what if, and I wouldn't want to wish that, what if unexpectedly they're taken away from me? I would not want that to happen to me, and so I am taking care of my mom, and I'm making sure that she continues to be strong and healthy. But of course, there are only things that we can control, certain things. We cannot control everything. And so we just have to try our best to stick to our priorities, to the people we care for, and to show them how much we value them. I have actually read stories on Facebook, for example, of people who just suddenly lost their parents. No? Some were even not extremely unhealthy, but because they got contaminated with COVID after a few days, they died. And the children were not even able to see their parents. They were not even able to bury them properly. So COVID time is a time of opportunity to look into our aspirations, priorities, people who are important to us. But it's also a time for self-improvement, self-care, self-compassion. How many times have we been, just thinking of others, being busy with work, and even if we are doing it for ourselves and our families, how much time do we spend for our self-growth, to do the things we've always wanted to do? Sometimes we keep postponing certain things, and perhaps this time of COVID is telling us, when are you going to start doing what you've always dreamt of? Like perhaps writing a book. We know that Brother Brendan and Sister Ellie have their books, and I really admire them for that. You who are listening right now, you who are watching right now, who are part of this webinar, perhaps you would like to also start a book project. And maybe this is a good time to be able to write down your thoughts or make an outline. This is also a time to spend in quality communication. Yes, we communicate. Yes, we talk. Yes, we try to listen. But it's not always a deep level kind of communication. It's actually easier to talk than to listen. And there are a lot of people who don't know how to listen. They pretend to listen, but they're not actually present in the moment. Or they don't quite understand what the other person is trying to say in terms of his or her feelings. I studied communication, for example, but I still have these challenges when it comes to listening to people and trying to understand them, trying to put myself in their particular situation, trying to see what they are imparting or conveying. And sometimes there's confusion in trying to see what they mean. So quality communication. Bonding activities within families, within small groups. Right now, I believe, after reading what level 2 in New Zealand means, I understand that you're still not allowed to have big gatherings, right? And even going to Mass, you cannot have more than 10 people inside the church. But you're now allowed to see a small group of people. And with this, you might be able to have more intimate gatherings, more personal gatherings where you can have time to share about your experiences. Or within the homes, for example, having regular family meetings, including practical steps to face the crisis. Some people, what they do is that, okay, you have your own time, your me time, and then after a few hours, let's all meet together in the dining area or in the living room to be able to share about what happened during the day. For those of you who know parents who are struggling with their small children, you could suggest to them, friend, you could give your children activities that could inspire them to use their talents in a special way. And you could even have Bible sharing activities with them. You could explain the stories of the Bible in a very amusing and amazing way and let them become interested in God's love story with them. So there are many things we can do while we are facing this COVID crisis. Also use talents to help. I was very glad that at the beginning of the lockdown, I had friends who organized groups like Frontline Feeders, and they started sending free food to our health workers. From March till the present, my friend who organized Frontline Feeders said on her Facebook page that they have been able to feed 200,000 people already. And we're so proud of them for having done that. Some young people have volunteered their artistic talents to be able to suggest logos and ways of communicating, how to get rid of COVID, perhaps in terms of the virus that could be just floating around. Not everybody has his or her suggestion regarding this, although as I said, there's still no virus up to now. But people are tweaking their talents in terms of how to volunteer their time, their talents, and their treasures. Exercise is also a very important aspect of this COVID crisis, because when we are just stagnant, we're not doing anything, we become lethargic. But when we exercise, we release our happy hormones. And these happy hormones energize us. They jumpstart our day. And so exercise, Zumba or stretching exercises, dancing with your loved ones is very helpful. Also remember to count your blessings. There might be a tendency to focus on the negative aspects of COVID, but it's important for us to see what we can be grateful for. You could do other things, like have you started your Marie Kondo time? I know you're on level 2, and so a lot of industries might be returning to at least half of their operations, no? But you might still have time to be able to fix your room, for example, and you might not have had that time before COVID. As I mentioned earlier, you could start writing books or composing songs, or even invent these gift ideas for birthdays that are coming up, or Christmas, for example, which is just, 6.5 months to go. Also, during COVID, I myself have had time for more online classes and opportunities for online businesses. As they say that this is the new normal. And so it's important for us to try to see how do we shift from the old normal to the present normal. For those who might still be looking for things to do, you could start recycling stuff in your home. Perhaps there were things you just wanted to throw away, and then now you realize, oh, I can still do something with this particular object, these plastics or these covers. So try to see what you can create out of them. Hobbies, for example, that you were not able to attend to, or perhaps you can start cooking. Maybe you've done that in the past weeks, even if you were not really cooking before, and now you are doing it. Some people I know, they just started cooking as a hobby, and now it's a big time business for them. Then prayer doesn't always have to be formula prayer. It could be deep breathing. For example, you could have a love word and say G as you inhale and sus as you exhale. And just keep repeating the name of Jesus, putting yourself in His presence. It's been said that God is always present to us, but we are the ones who are not always present to Him. And so we put ourselves in the proper disposition of listening to Him and allowing Him to penetrate every part of our being. Prayer could be meditation. It could be mindfulness, awareness that God is in us and God is everywhere. Body prayer could also be another way of using our faculties to glorify Him. There was a book that was compiled and written by a Jesuit priest, Father Kilong Kilong, and there he suggests movements or gestures which you can use alongside the Our Father, for example. Body prayer is a beautiful way of expressing our love for God and allowing Him to come into our being. Also in prayer, we need to remember that yes, of course, we would want to receive the sacraments and they are central to our life as Christians. But let us not forget that the church is not just the building where we go to worship. The church would be all of us, the family of God. Letter C, with a capital C at that. We are the family of God. We carry God within us, and God carries us within His heart. And so we are the church wherever we are, in our homes, on the streets, in the cafes. We can make the kingdom of God present. And that is a lifestyle of prayer. Prayer, of course, is not just asking that He would heal us from the ill effects of COVID, from our wounds, but prayer is thanksgiving. I'm sure you miss the Eucharist in its physical accessibility and in receiving the sacramental presence of God. And what is the Eucharist? It is thanksgiving. Also, of course, very central to prayer is listening to God. As I said, it's easier to talk, even to our friends. It's easier to babble and to express our emotions. But sometimes, even in our relationship with God, we forget to listen to Him, and He may have a lot of things to say to us. Another is offering what we feel. We might be feeling depressed, we might be feeling confused, but there's such a thing as a redemptive prayer, that we offer what we are experiencing to God for the healing of other people. That's a very beautiful way of praying. Lord, I'm feeling depressed right now. For example, you could say that I offer this to you for all the people who are also depressed at this time. We are uniting ourselves with others in this kind of prayer, and we are thinking of them, not simply our own intentions. You could also hold what is called the Biblia Rasal. Perhaps you're doing it already through cell groups, but even not just among yourselves as YFC or SFC, you could suggest it to your family, that they hold or you hold within your home what might be called, here in the Philippines, it's called like that in some circles, Biblia Rasal, because it stands for Biblia, Aral, Asal, Dasal. Reflecting on the Bible and really masticating the words of God and really digesting the scriptures, so that as we study the scriptures, we are also praying with the scriptures and praying the scriptures in order for our asal, our behavior, to change for the better. And it is a way of sharing our faith with each other. Intercessory prayer, there's so many people to pray for. Individuals you could list down. I'm sure a lot of people have asked you to pray for them. Sometimes when I sit in a corner and I think of the people I need to pray for, it takes me so long to do that because I have so many prayer petitions. So intercessory prayer. Then E in hope would be encouragement. We can continuously ask ourselves, how can we help others? And let's ask them. Even perhaps people we encounter on social media, how can I be of help to you? I may not be able to give you money, but can I offer you a listening ear if you have a problem? Or can I pray for you? Check on each other. As I said, mental health issues are on the rise now. We might not be aware that, for example, your teenage brother or sister might actually be experiencing discouragement, despair, or depression, and you're not even aware of it because he or she is just locked up in his or her room playing computer games all day long. Affirm each other, bring out the best in one another, and have small support groups. The support groups do not have to be large, but we can be here for each other. Volunteer. As I said, it could be through time, it could be through talents, it could be through treasures. During the beginning of COVID also, some of my high school friends said, let's put together even a small amount of money from each person and let's donate PPEs, the personal protection equipment for our health workers. And we were able to give, I'm not bragging about it, I'm just sharing about the happiness of being able to help our health workers. So we were able to send the funds to particular hospitals here in Metro Manila. So that is hope. H is healing, O for opportunities, and of course P for prayer, E for encouragement. Amidst COVID, in the time of COVID, we need to apply hope. We also need to remember to develop adversity quotient. because there will always be challenges coming our way, whether it is COVID or some other obstacle or storm in our life. We need to have high adversity quotient and to remember that in every adversity, there is an opportunity waiting for us. This is, of course, difficult to express to those people whose loved ones have died because of COVID. But you know, if these people, and we help them because we care for them, to open up their hearts amid their anxiety, amid the grieving, to open up their hearts to the grace of God, He will be their source of hope. He will be their source of strength. The question is, dear friends, brothers and sisters, how has the COVID crisis transformed us into better persons? Perhaps the situation in New Zealand is rather different from what's happening here in the Philippines. As I said earlier, I'm quite jealous that at least more people can now go to church there, unlike here. And even I myself am not sure when the churches will be open to the public, because here our cases are still many. And there is a tendency for people to just go out and not apply or observe social distancing. But the question is whether in the near future here in Metro Manila or in the Philippines, we will be having more opportunities for public gatherings or not. And there in New Zealand, where there could be more discipline among the citizens, whatever the situation may be in any part of the world, I think we need to go back to this question. How has the COVID crisis transformed us into better persons? We need to be able to examine ourselves. We need to be able to look at this as a time for us to be better Christians as well. And an international clinical psychologist who happens also to be a papal awardee, he's the kind of guy who is sent to different parts of the world, even to the Middle East and to those countries that have been besieged by terrorists. He has a lot of experiences when it comes to recovery from trauma and from tragedies. His name is Dr. Robert J. Wicks. I'm a personal fan of his, and I've read some of his books. I met him also when he came over to Manila. He is the author of Bounds, Living a Resilient Life. And he says to us, the choice is up to us. Hopefully, with some quiet reflection and the influence of psychologically healthy friends and family members, we can do this, not in the spirit of resignation, but with a sense of gratitude for all that was practically invisible in our daily routine, but is available now in simple, nourishing ways, because pandemic life has revealed it all to us for our benefit and enjoyment. And as I end my talk, of course, if you have questions later, things you want to share, you can do that too. But I'd like to end my slides with this very beautiful prayer by Reynold Neighbor. It's really one of my favorite prayers. I think it's really full of wisdom, and it is significant to our life in the new normal. And you could pray it with me from your heart, the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardships as the pathway to peace, taking, as Jesus did, the sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that He will make all things right if I surrender to His will, that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with Him, forever in the next. Amen.
Amen.